Like with our super bill, we don't legally have to mail those. If you're a homeowner, you know this bill is coming. Is your legal application for your home?
My bank screwed up and eliminated half of my electronic bills just accidentally.
Oh, that's not good.
And I was like, I had to put them all back in and all the addresses because they just.
They didn't update and something didn't work.
All right, we're going to call the meeting to order. Welcome colleagues on the board, welcome audience. Happy to have people participate in important decision-making tonight. We're going to do a roll call first.
Mr. Funes-Bliss?
Here.
Ms. Butler-Challenger here. Ms. Wilson?
Here.
Ms. Hagerman? Here. Ms. Kellerman?
Here.
Mr. Phillips?
Here.
Mr. Rosecrans absent this evening.
Thank you. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Immediately after, we'll do a moment of silence. Pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now a moment of silence. All right, thank you. Just read the text.
Did you?
Well, I was moment of silencing. For those of you joining us for the first time, there is agendas up at the lectern if you'd like to follow along today. And if we're out, we can make some more for you. Let's start with the approval of that agenda. Any changes or motions to be made?
Nope, I say we make a motion to accept the agenda as printed.
I'll
Unless you have
support it.
something.
Nope.
Okay.
I hear a motion and a support. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor of approving the agenda as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we've got an agenda. Item 4 is disclosures of conflicts of interest. Does anyone have a conflict of interest tonight that they'd like to disclose? Sounds like no. With that, we'll roll into the first public statement. This first public statement is limited to 3 minutes each, and it is designated for statements concerning the current agenda. If you have statements that do not concern the agenda tonight, there will be a second time at the end of the meeting for you to speak toward whatever you'd like to tell us for an additional 3 minutes. So if you have something on the agenda or about the agenda, please help yourself to step up to the lectern and tell us who you are and tell us what you want to tell us.
Good evening. My name is David Wright. I have lived on Peacock Road since 1975. I'm a retired MSU professor and administrator, but I'm not here as an expert of any kind, but as a concerned citizen. I'm concerned about the use of PFAS chemicals in the proposed manufacturing plant on Webster Road near 69. According to the EPA, PFAS chemicals are ubiquitous in our environment, including our water and in the blood of most animals, including all of us. PFAS chemicals, sometimes called forever chemicals, are very, very slow to degrade. Plainfield Charter Township and Algoma Township in Kent County recently settled a $69.5 million lawsuit against Wolverine Worldwide for PFAS contamination. They claimed in their lawsuit that PFAS chemicals have been linked to certain types of cancers and other health issues. The EPA says PFAS chemicals are pervasive in the environment and their human toxicity is still to be determined. I believe we ought to proceed slowly and carefully for improving a manufacturing plant in the township that uses PFAS chemicals. My question to the zoning board is, do any of your members have expertise regarding chemical, including PFAS pollution, including accidental spills? If so, do you have a report that I'll read? If not, did you retain independent engineering or environmental assessment, an independent or environmental assessment firm to study this question? If the answer to both is no, then I believe this project should be tabled until we all get to see that analysis.
Thank you, Mr. Wright.
Doctor.
Dr. Wright, excuse me.
Mr. Stein.
Other folks like to give a public statement tonight?
Hi, good evening. My name is Jacqueline Hutchison. I am the Tri-County Development Manager with LEAP. I'm just here tonight to express, one, thankfulness of working with all of you, Dymaxion and Norm, on this project. I also want to let you know that this is the exact project we see for our contract of services with the county, which is free to the township. So I'm here and able to help with these kind of services at any point in time. But I just urge you all to approve this project tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to make a public comment?
Good evening, my name is Judy Gardy. Welcome, Kate. Sorry I haven't had a chance to personally meet you, but welcome. First, I'd like to thank you for, as chairperson of the Senior Services Advisory Board, I'd like to thank you for your continued support for the Senior Center and the funding that appears in the budget tonight. It's very important. The seniors love the Senior Center, and we are encouraged by the activities that are happening on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and hope we'll continue with that. Secondly, I would just ask you that you table the decision tonight about the rezoning for that industrial property. I agree with other people that have spoken that I'm concerned about the potential environmental hazards that it might cause to the environment here in Bath Township. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gardy.
I'm going to go off script a little bit. I'm hard of hearing because of a self-inflicted foolish thing 20 years ago. I wish I haven't heard, but just a little bit from Judy. Haven't understood a thing because people are not utilizing the microphone. They don't work unless you're close to them. And that includes all you folks. So please, make use of the microphones.
Thank you, Mr. Church.
Thank you.
That worked.
Other folks interested in speaking tonight?
Hello. Jason Umrigi, 6051 Clyce Road. I just wanted to point out that I'm excited about Norm's Fasteners for the job opportunities that it'll bring to our community. I live north of town on Clyce Road, obviously. But I look at all my neighbors, most of my neighbors, many of my neighbors. These are folks who sometimes don't have access to college, who don't have access to the resources to obtain white-collar jobs or executive-level C-suite jobs. These are folks who are looking for good-paying, stable jobs with career and technical aspects to it. I see Norm Fasteners as a good advantage for our community, for those who are not college-bound. So on that regard, I would support it. It's also great development for Webster Road. and will support the growth of our community in smart ways. Trustee Kellerman came to the Planning Commission where I serve. She did express a lot of concerns about PFAS. I too am concerned about PFAS, but I also think that this is not a local level set of things to consider. I think that there are regional and state and federal ways of combating PFAS. The horrors of the past are not the horrors of today. There are strong regulations related to PFAS, and as you'll hear, and I'm excited to hear Mr. Gursky talk about how SCUMA processes its wastewater, it's specifically related to PFAS. I think that's the level of understanding that we should maintain when we think about norm fasteners in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Elmarigi.
John Barnard, 5717 Chestnut Street. Been in manufacturing for over 45 years. Barnard Manufacturing started in Bath right here on Drumheller and Clark Road. Feel the need for this facility to be here. The number one thing that I back is that it's bringing in a foreign entity. Their standards are well above ours. I work in a manufacturing facility right now, and they'll have the British standards that they go by besides the US standards, which theirs are 3 times more stringent than ours. They'll be ISO certified, 14,000, so they'll be internally audited for everything that they do as far as environmental. Plus, they'll be dimensionally controlled and have a good work environment. They have a very clean facilities. They won't be having a lot of coolants and stuff like that, but they'll be able to control that in-house. There'll be good jobs. The need for jobs like this is overwhelming. Everybody's walking away from trades. Nobody wants to be in manufacturing anymore. Somebody wants to do it here, not bring it from overseas. You know, I'm happy that they choose Bath. There's a lot of people that work. A lot of local family businesses that aren't here anymore. They're willing to take a chance, spend $70 million on a development. 200 jobs, it'll be 200 well-paying jobs. There's a lot of skill in this area that there's no manufacturing for people like myself, that there's no machining in town anymore. Demer's all gone. Everything that, used to do in town is gone. We have a few steel distributors around, but it'll be something good for the community. I know you're worried about PFAS, but they don't have plating tanks. They don't have, there's a lot of things that are involved with that when you bring up that to understand it. I don't feel that it's that, it gets brought up, but I live it every day and everything's controlled. The way things used to be, didn't have any of these standards. The ISO certification, 14,000, you've got a third-party auditor that comes out and tests. We're in Delta Township. I deal with Delta Township supervision. They do water tests right downstream of our plants. Our plant is an old GM plant. There's no floor drains in the floor in the plant anywhere, so nothing can escape in any floor drains. I'm not sure what their design is, but that's held within. I asked if they were doing truck welds
Mr.
inside.
Barnard, your time is up. I'm
Thank you.
sorry. Thank you for your comments tonight, though.
Oh, say, she was coming behind you.
Ladies first, Ray.
I'm speaking into the microphone, Jim. Ray Kotke, Park Lake Road. A little insight onto what the Planning Commission does in regards to hazardous chemical potential and things of that nature. We're not experts in, we are in some fields, but not in in chemicals. But what we do is we rely on the state and federal agencies to see that they do their oversight and that projects are scrutinized, and if they are approved, then we're satisfied with their level of testing, if you will. One of the things I want to mention, the earlier individual brought up Wolverine Worldwide. Wolverine Worldwide was established in 1883. That's 140 years ago. And they were polluting all of that time. They tanned leather, and they did it in big tanks. I actually interviewed to be their transportation manager. And that was in the late 70s, and they were doing it at that time. But this is not 1883. I also worked for almost 15 years at Motor Wheel Corporation, which incidentally is now a Superfund site. And again, Motor Wheel came about in about 1904, and they had open pits that they disposed of their plating chemicals and pickling tanks and that. But again, this is not 1904. And I am confident that the individuals that are scrutinizing these plans and these potential hazardous environment, chemicals, the PFAS, are doing their job. And in fact, in that Michigan is the most contaminated state in the union. They're doing it a lot more than other states, especially in this in Gretchen Whitmer's regime. So I'm confident that, and I guess I have to say, as a lifelong resident of Bath, I'm cautiously optimistic that this will bring a lot of good things to the community, and if any, or very, very, very few negatives. So that's all I have to say tonight. And Jennifer, it's good to see you again.
Thanks.
Good to have you here.
Thanks, Mr. Kotke.
Hi, I'm Ann Chafee, and I'm Bath Community Schools Board President. I'm here today in favor of Norm Fasteners. Can you hear me? And saying what a great opportunity this would be for our school district. They are very focused on education, and I think it will be wonderful. They offer internships, work study. We have a lot of kids that are not college bound, and we have nothing here for them to get internships. And this is something that's right up the street. We wouldn't have to have transportation. It would save us money that way. And one thing that a lot of people haven't said, it's going to bring in a lot of tax revenue. Our schools are crumbling. It's either going to be on the backs of our residents, or somehow we have to have extra tax dollars coming into our community. We've got a 25-year-old roof we're looking at replacing, and we're just hoping that somehow this would maybe bring some extra money, that we wouldn't have to float bonds continually. But when I was talking to some of our teachers, they were very excited, especially the special education, and it's not just special ed is our kids that are not always college bound, but have the work study, and this would be wonderful for them. And the teachers were really excited to hear about it. And they seem to be really focused on schools, so we're excited to have them in the community. Hopefully you will pass it tonight, because I think it'd be a wonderful addition. I've been in Bath 30-some years now, and granted, nobody likes change. I'm one of them. I hate to see things developed, but it comes a time we're getting stagnant, and we need some development in this community. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Madam School Board President. Anyone else like to give a public comment?
Hey everyone, Keith Lambert, Lansing Economic Area Partnership LEAP. My colleague Jacqueline already spoke. I want to speak from a little bit different perspective. She's our face of the Clinton County contract, but on behalf of LEAP, we're a public-private partnership, a nonprofit organization, the economic development regional entity for Ingham, Eaton, and Clinton counties. Our board's made up of over 80 members of the community, business leaders, community leaders, government officials. And on behalf of all of them and our team, Bob Trezise, our president and CEO, we're very supportive of the Norm Fasteners project. I spoke a couple weeks ago and talked a little bit about the history there, but we've worked with them very closely. I know the company very well, and we're very confident of their ability to do this project, and not only do the project, but be here for generations. And I think one of the things I didn't mention a couple weeks ago is that they're not, a singular supplier to any one company. A lot of the automotive industry in this community is very oriented around General Motors, which can be good, but it also means when GM has issues, our supply base has issues, right? And this company is not dependent in any way on General Motors. And they, want to be here because they see the value of Michigan, they see the value of partnering with this community. So that's an important thing just about their sustainability. They're also very environmentally conscious. I hear the concerns about PFAS. I think the company can address that in a variety of different ways. So I think there's a lot of good answers there. And then there was also a really good point made about the tax revenue. We're supportive of the special use permit as well as the industrial facilities tax abatement and the industrial facilities district, the industrial development district that enables that, for the rationale that economic diversification and tax-based diversification is critically important for a community that is really, the point was made, it's residents that pay a lot of the taxes in Bath Township right now. And having a new entity, this will create an immense tax base, basically overnight in the first couple years. And then once the tax abatement's over, you get the full bore impact. So tremendously positive in that way, and the 50-50 split is a really good example of public-private partnership versus rent zones and other things that are a little bit more complex to talk through the cost-benefit analysis. But a 198 is really a tried-and-true program, industrial. We've done these in Delhi Township and Delta Township just in the last few months. So it's very, very typical. There's been hundreds in Clinton County over recent decades. I know there haven't been a heck of a lot of them in Bath Township, but this site, zoned properly, special use permit considerations were deep, and I think a lot of really good discussions there. And we really feel like the site's appropriate, and this is a great company to bring into the community, the broader region. So we're very excited about it and very supportive as LEAP for your actions tonight in the affirmative. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lambert. Anyone else like to give a public statement at this point? Again, there will be a second time at the end of the meeting where all of those folks who spoke can speak again, or folks who didn't speak can speak. That brings us to item number 6, items from county, state, federal, and other agencies. I don't see anyone out there, but I could be wrong. All right, we'll move on. Item 7 is the consent agenda. We have the minutes of the Planning Commission meeting.
I make a motion to accept the consent agenda as submitted.
Support.
We have a motion and a second, no discussion because it's the consent agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that moves us to item number 8, approval of minutes. We have both of the Board of Trustees minutes from the special meeting and the regular meeting on November 20th.
I make a motion to, oh wait, do we want to accept them together, or do you want to, okay. I make a motion to accept the minutes of the special meeting and the regular meeting from November 20th, 2023.
I'll support that.
Motion and a second. Is there any discussion about the minutes? All right, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, approved minutes. Item 9 is approval of the vouchers.
I'll make a motion to approve the December 4th, 2023 vouchers as submitted.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion about the vouchers tonight? All right, hearing none. Let's do a roll call vote for this one.
Ms. Butler Challenger, yes. Mr. Funes Bliss?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Ms. Kellerman?
Yes.
Ms. Hagerman?
Yes.
Thank you.
No treasurer's report tonight. That brings us to item 11, committee appointments. Thank you to my colleagues who responded to my email requesting interest in committees so quickly after our last meeting. I used an overly complicated spreadsheet to try to come up with where I think we all fit best so that we all get some committees that we're interested in and bring some talent to. So what you have in your packet is the proposal tonight on where we would all sit. This does mean some people will shift, it means some people will stay. I tried to heed all of your requests that you sent my way. The one that is not being appointed to tonight is the Public Art Committee. I think we're down to maybe 1 or 2 people on that Public Art Committee, so I think we need to decide as a board what we want to do with that, but we can have that conversation at another time. There's not enough people to meet because they don't have quorum at this point. So my proposal is that you accept the slate in front of us, but happy to take thoughts, happy to take trades if you want to barter with someone at the table. How are you all feeling about this?
You looking for a motion to approve your committee appointments?
Sure.
I'll make that motion.
Great. I have a motion
I'll second it.
and a second. All right, any discussion? Something I want to be clear about so it doesn't seem like we're sneaking anything by. This does create a finance committee as well, which we heard from our accountants they would highly recommend us to do, our auditors. Auditors or accountants?
Accountants.
Our accountants. So we're going to do that. I didn't want that to be hidden in there. So that's the only new committee being created here. The rest are standing committees. The Construction Board of Appeals and the Sewer Board of Appeals have not, I understand, met in at least a decade. So I've appointed myself to those, not because I don't want to meet in meetings, but if for some reason an issue came before either one of those bodies, I could easily step into the group that we've already appointed without having to shuffle. All right, any other discussion about this? All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Please note that these are scheduled to start January 1. So for those of us that still have December meetings for the committees we currently sit on, that's your chance to go and say farewell or welcome, whatever message you want to bring. But we'll start these on January 1 anew for the new year.
So we'll have
The
to,
election commission to start now.
Okay.
Okay.
Except the election commission. You've been drafted now.
we'll have to choose dates for the finance, because we don't have dates.
Okay.
We'll have to update that.
So we'll get some dates on the finance committee. We can probably do that at a future meeting.
Yep.
Okay. Great, thank you for that, team. No committee reports tonight. Unfinished business, 13A, that no items for introduction, but boy, do we have some items for action tonight. First up is a resolution for the employee contribution to pension. I'll turn it over to Superintendent Hildebrandt to give us an introduction.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I am also, will be drawing on the expertise of legal counsel sitting here next to me, Helen Lizzie Mills, because she was here during a time that I was not as involved with the process when there were some changes made to MERS in 2015. So I'll pass the mic to her at this time, and then we can discuss the other materials that are in the packet.
Good evening, members of the board. As the board will remember, we have, for the last couple of meetings, been asked to consider a request by a handful of employees who are participants in the MERS B4 pension that the township provides. During those conversation points, and we'll get to exactly what their ask was, but during those conversation points, it became very clear to me that there were some core issues that we needed to kind of take a step back and understand what our next steps would be, and to decide the pace at which this board might be asked to make decisions, in particular relative to those asks of the employees for payout of their banked sick leave. In having those follow-up conversations with the superintendent's office, I was able to explain a handful of things historically that make us in a tough position, but not in an impossible position right now, that I think will be useful to the board. We certainly did provide a memo that explains the instant ask before you, but let me just briefly explain a handful of things. First and foremost, the reason that this MERS pension issue has come before you is stemming from the realization mid-year that your employees' contributions themselves were about to go up to about a quarter of their paycheck. As of 2023, your employees who are participating in that particular pension plan are paying 19.96% of their own pay into that, in addition to your own contribution on behalf of the board at 11%. That number has been steadily increasing pretty significantly over the last several years, a lot of it dating back to changes that occurred within MERS in 2015 and 2016. Around that time, MERS went from what I would call sort of that idea of annually refinancing your home mortgage, where you get a great new rate, but you never ever are going to pay off that liability, right? To actually, we're going to have all of our municipal employers that are working with us, they're going to actually need to pay off that mortgage, so to speak, by 2030. That result was, of course, a very significant adjustment that needed to be made to both the employer and the employee side of those contributions. We saw, on behalf of my firm, as in my role as a labor attorney, we saw lots of communities trying to decide what would those next steps be. How do we manage what is now this newly seemingly accelerated liability that we need to pay down by 2030? A lot of employers, municipal employers, went after plan changes immediately in the aftermath of those changes within MERS. They would change things from a defined benefit pension, which promises a particular level of benefit to an employee for the rest of their living years after retirement. Some of them switched to a defined contribution, which makes no promise about what you bring home in retirement, but only promises what the employer puts in while you're still working. A lot of folks also did all kinds of other tinkering with their pension plans. Bath Township has been able to this point to make all of their appropriate payments to their pension, meeting their obligations so that they can keep their promise to retirees. But we are now getting to a point where the cap that exists on the employer side contribution, which is set currently at 11%, is resulting in an incredible uptick in how much the employees are having to take on as that liability. It's still growing because we've had a number of years since this new concept was put into play. You've had a lot of retirements in the last recent years. We all know the market hasn't been super great, and it's up and down. If you were to look at your actuarial report, you would see at certain points your rate of return was something like 3% from MERS on an annualized smooth basis. Now, they'll stretch that and they'll tell you over the period of years it's a much better rate of return. Don't worry, none of us at this table can fix or adjust any of that. We can keep our own thoughts to ourselves about that process. But the result is a concern about how much folks are going to be paying toward their pension. So when we drew back that side of the curtain, we were able to establish that the concern that was prompting the ask to come to this board to allow certain employees who are participants in that pension plan to cash out their sick leave early was because they were worried that the board was planning in very short order to make significant plan changes to your pension offering. That question has not yet been presented to you. That question is being explored and certainly will be explored with the appropriate collective bargaining units and any other participating employees, but we are not there yet. And so one of the creative solutions that we were able to come up with in consultation with what I would say was a spokesperson for one of those employee groups and then also with your collective bargaining units was number one, to give us all a little bit of space, in particular those employees who are worried about what's about to happen January 1, meaning they're going to have an extra 5% pulled from their take-home pay, was to put a pause, that the township will take on the burden of that increased cost, which I'll leave to the superintendent to explain in a moment. She's the numbers person. That the township will give themselves and the employees a bit of a pause so that we can step carefully through making decisions about whether you wish to make a change to your pension plan or whether you wish to make a change to how the costs of that pension plan are being borne, which are really two very separate questions. The concern from your employees who were requesting payout of their sick leave was because they thought you were going to come in and make changes that would make them unable to get the full benefit of what they had been anticipating over the course of their very lengthy and valuable careers. So the secondary piece of the resolution that's in front of you pertains to if this board determines to make changes in the future to its pension plan, which you are not being asked to do today. We're not here to present on that. We're not to that stage. But you would be making a commitment under this resolution that if you make a change to that pension plan, folks who are within a certain amount of time to their proximity to their retirement will not be impacted by that change because they have been working their careers entire time under a certain set of parameters and would be in those last handful of years when a pension plan change would be extremely significant. And you've seen some of the data coming forth from some of those requesters explaining that difference. Anybody short of that still has some time to make adjustments. We all have to plan for retirement. We think about where do we put our money and how do we do it. But those folks are really near that retirement phase where this would be extremely detrimental for all the reasons I think the board has previously talked about. So we are, and I say we, the superintendent's office and I have been talking about this matter, and we are recommending to you that you adopt the resolution in front of you to put a pause, that the employee contribution rate toward pension will not go up January 1 as it is currently set to go. You will have at least a 3-month period to evaluate what your next steps are and bargain as necessary if there are changes to be made. You certainly have the right to extend that further if you feel like you need a little more time or we haven't quite gotten to the right resolution. And again, it would put in place essentially a promise of those who are nearest to retirement will not be under the bus, so to speak, when and if any plan changes are made. We think that this does the least amount of harm and protects what the promises are that have already been made on the table at this point. So with that, I'll stop talking and defer to the superintendent's office for numbers, pieces, and any questions the board has.
Thank you for allowing me to get my computer. I realized momentarily while she was speaking that those numbers were on that device. In calculating the numbers for 2024 and looking at the time period, the 5.5% difference of what the employees would be asked to pay is $28,116.49. If you agree to this resolution, that would be the obligation that you would be taking on for that 3-month period of 2024, January, February, and March. The other numbers I ran include the 3 months for the employees would be $102,000 approximately. And for the employer, together with their 11% contribution, with the 5.5% contribution, would be $84,000, 349 cents. So normally you would pay 56, the township would pay 56,000 approximately. So in taking those two numbers together, you get to 84.
Stated another way, for the 3-month period, the employees would be at 19.96% as they are today, and the employer, the township, would be at 16.5%. You are currently at 11%. So you are taking on that burden because the bill still needs to be paid. We know that those costs need to be paid down. We all have to pay our mortgages. I always use that example because that's really what we're looking at, a very sizable mortgage. So that is the recommendation at this time.
Thank you. Questions from the team?
First, I want to just thank both of you for your very thorough explanations. I know I have had a lot of questions about this, and I appreciate your explanations. I just wondered, the resolution, does it address item number 2, which is that this will not impact the end-of-career employees? I didn't glean that from it when I read it earlier, so I just wondered how that is made clear in the text.
We'll need to get a corrected version. We had 2 that we were circulating around, but in the meantime, we can certainly amend this one at the table if the board wishes to adopt it, to advise that any pension plan changes will not be applied to individuals who are within 3 years of retirement. I think that is the number that we worked out. And that is quite likely an error on my part. I think I sent multiple versions to the superintendent, and she probably was unable to discern from me which one was the right one. But that's an easy fix. Thank you for pointing that out, Trustee Hagerman.
Karen, is that something you could easily print out?
Yes, I can.
Great.
I'm actually trying to pull it up right now.
Great catch, Kate. Other questions?
Karen, have we heard from MERS on the actuarials?
We do now have in our possession those actuarials. I just received the other one, I think a day or 2 after our last board meeting.
Oh, okay.
Just following up on that, Treasurer Wilson, I have reviewed those as well with the superintendent's office, and they reflect to me that there's another opportunity for continued discussion. One of the comments that I shared with the superintendent and the deputy superintendent was that the actuarial reports you received from MERS reflect MERS trying to figure out how to achieve cost savings, when I think part of the question that was presented to MERS that they may not have heard the same way was, we may just want to address employee contribution rates. Like, those are two different things. We don't necessarily have to go tinkering with a plan. The employer could simply say, we will take on additional cost. And so that's part of what there's a bit of work to be done there that we'll be happy to roll our sleeves up and get engaged in.
I'll wait till the superintendent comes back. I have a question.
I've got a question for Lizzie then.
Okay.
In 2015, when they were making these changes, was that due to the funds being underfunded and they needed to shift so that they would be guaranteed funded?
Yes and no. I think that the pressure that was increasingly upon MERS was in the fallout of the Great Recession. A lot of folks realizing that promises have been made that have not been funded as we've gone along. And in addition to that, the dramatic drops in rates of return that occurred in that period were really significantly impacting the regular rate of return that they expected at MERS. And so MERS took a hard look internally about how are we managing these funds. They made a series of other assumption changes at the same time, pretty standard. You know, they said, oh gosh, people are living longer. But they did a handful of other things. They changed their anticipated wage benefits that would be incurred. They also just really took a step back and said, we are here to push the funding responsibility, as you have suggested.
This might be getting too far down the road, but having worked not in government for my career, this defined benefit programs have sort of gone by the wayside, probably because of some of the things you just mentioned. It's hard to keep them funded. Should we look at a defined contribution plan? Is that an option for us? Maybe moving, sort of grandfathering current people in and new employees into that? Would that help solve some of these problems?
It will certainly, what I would say, sort of stop the bleeding in terms of what that continual accrual of liability. It does not change the liability that is already incurred for those who are here. So it would still take a multi-pronged approach to address this issue. In either case, those would be issues that we would definitely need to get in front of at least your bargaining unit employees, because those are part of their labor contract. You are correct, though. A number of employers have gone to a defined contribution setup in the public sector. I will say that there are arguments that I hear at the labor side of the table that folks who have gone to a defined contribution are coming back to a defined benefit, because part of what they will say is a sort of part of the benefit of working in the public sector is not necessarily your pay, but it could be your benefits, and that we're finding that right balance in each community where we work right now. So that'll be certainly one of the things we can talk about and explore for interest purposes.
Yeah, I think the trouble is communities often don't feel that same way.
Correct.
Is that perhaps one of the options you're looking at or discussing that we might hear from later?
We will have all of that on the table for
Okay.
conversation purposes. I think the first crack at it that was received from MERS was, again, MERS responding to what they thought was a cost-saving effort to keep a defined benefit plan, but tinker with it so that it perhaps is a little less costly, which benefits both sides. But it was, it's certainly not the only option.
Okay, thank you. Jack?
Yes, Superintendent Hildebrand, are you comfortable with this minor adjustment in the budget? Okay.
Is that reflected in the budget we have tonight?
It is not.
Okay.
I did not want to make any changes to the budget that you had not authorized previously.
Is that something we can do tonight, or would you suggest us passing the budget as is and do an adjustment?
An adjustment. I think specifically doing an adjustment for this as an amendment would be prudent.
All right, could we do that right away?
We could do it at the next meeting, because you're going to be looking at budget amendments at the next meeting.
Okay, great. Budget amendments for 23 or 24?
23, but I could include the amendment for 24.
Okay, I think that's helpful, because we haven't passed it yet. It seems sort of awkward to have an adjustment that we would be waiting on.
Yeah, it gets spread across multiple departments, which is the complexity of doing it tonight.
Got it. That's helpful, thanks. Other questions, clarifications from the group? All right, how are folks feeling about this? Should we move ahead with this? Is this the direction we want to go?
Negotiations, yes.
I think if this is what the employees have agreed to, then I would support that.
Would you like to put that in motion for him?
Sure. I will make a motion to approve this resolution. Do I need to say what it is?
To cap the employees' contribution.
To cap the
To
employee
cap the
contribution.
employee contribution through March 2024.
And to clarify, that motion is for the one that was just handed out to
Yeah.
us. So we might want to mention
Yeah, it does have some
that difference.
blanks to fill in, but I think there's just consensus about what those dates would be.
Great, thank you. So there's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, is there any other discussion? All right, I think this deserves a roll call vote.
Mr. Fuensplus?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Ms. Kellerman?
Yes.
Ms. Hagerman?
Yes.
Ms. Butler Challenger, yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, would you mind if I just took a real brief pause before we get to the next portion here?
No.
Like a slight recess,
Because
maybe?
we're going to dig in.
That's where I want to be ready for.
Sure, a
Thank you.
bio break, pause for a moment.
Jeez, Brenda.
Our attention.
Well, it's on me.
You know who that gentleman is?
I don't.
Okay.
I didn't intend it to go this way. Would you like me to recall?
All right, we're going to get started again. I wasn't going to start without you, don't worry. Item 13, large B, small b, is the Norm Fastener Company suite of decisions we need to make today, including a special use permit, a resolution about an industrial development district, a resolution about an industrial facilities exemption certificate, and a contract for tax abatement. So we are sort of hunkering down here on this issue for the next several minutes. I thought an appropriate way to roll this out was to have Miles, our planner, sort of introduce it. I know we have a guest from SCUMA here to talk about some of the concerns that some of us have around PFAS. And then the developers are here, so we welcome them to the table. And then we have our assessor here to talk about the tax implications. That is what I would propose how I propose we would structure this. Does that sound okay to you all? All right, that means Miles, you are up first.
All right, thank you so much. So during the.
Were you
public
talking to
com-
that microphone a little bit
I'll do
closer,
my
Miles?
best.
Thanks.
Yeah, so during the public comment tonight, it was discussed, different aspects of the implications that a site like this or a development like this could have on the community. So I'll do my best to speak to kind of the land use aspect of how this site fits into the community and then the zoning implications. So I gave this spiel last time, but I'll reiterate for anyone that wasn't in the room last time. So how the planning department comes to our determinations is by consulting the adopted comprehensive plan that this community adopted, I believe, in 2022. So we look to that, and we look to the current zoning land use designation and what the future land use designation for this parcel is. So it's currently zoned D development, and on the future land use plan, it's zoned as a commercial use. So this land use fits within that zoning category. So that was one key thing that led to the planning department's determination to support this development. Just to go over now some dimensional aspects of this site, so everyone's on the same page. This would be considered a warehouse or industrial establishment under that zoning district. It's proposed to be around 365,000 square feet on a total site of 19.33 acres, and it would have a total footprint for the parking and drives of about 200,000 square feet. So it's a larger site for this community for sure. And the planning department and the planning commission, I don't think has made any bones that there aren't gonna be implications for this community with this site. I think it was stated by a few of the planning commission members that they feel those implications will largely be positive. That is why it led on November 14th to them conditionally approving the submitted site plan and recommending for the conditional approval of the special use permit. So that's what's before the board tonight. That was a recommendation from the planning commission, and I'm here to answer any questions from the board.
So Miles, I see that there's 18 conditions, which as a planning commissioner, I will say is more than I think I've ever seen on any project.
Yeah.
Are these the latest, greatest from the planning commission and the planning department? Is this exactly what you'd like us to consider tonight?
Yeah, it would be our recommendation to conditionally approve this with the conditions as presented tonight.
All right, thank you.
And
Question? Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say as a last point, in the formulation of those conditions, I know there's been a lot of talks about how this site was reviewed and what went into those reviews. We worked with our engineering firm, which is Prine and Newhoff out of Grand Rapids. We feel they're very good. Although this might be a unique site for Bath Township, it by no means was a unique site for Prine and Newhoff staff to review, and they helped in the formulation of many of those conditions.
Miles, how long have you and the department been working on this project?
Well, how we structure it is before application even comes, we usually do a series of pre-application meetings just to vet if this is even actually a possibility. So going off of that timeline, it's probably been about 5 to 6 months now. So, yeah, and somebody just said 11 months, so I could see that.
Thank you. Questions for Miles? All right, thanks, Miles.
All right, great.
Stay close, because I'm sure we'll have lots for you.
Could you give us the address or approximate location of this site?
Yeah, so, the parcel's been subdivided, so I don't know if an address has been created by equalization yet, but do we have a new parcel number?
We have a proposed one for 2024.
Okay,
But there's not one in 2023 at this time.
yeah.
Because it won't take place until after tax day on December 31st.
Okay, so I'll provide the parcel number for the parent parcel right now. I don't know if that helps anybody, but get ready for it. It's 010-020-400-010-00. But just to put it in layman's terms, it's the large farm field that is just south of the township office. So like the property right there.
Just south of what?
Just south of the township office, so the property right there.
Lynn's Farm, back 20.
There you go.
Okay,
Lynn's Farm, the back 20.
so front's on Drumheller?
It has frontage on Webster, and they'll get their access off of,
It won't have frontage on Webster. It'll only have frontage on Food Court. Can you?
that's
No,
correct.
you're fine. Go ahead, just step to the microphone.
Go ahead.
Do you have the ability to pull it up?
The way the land division has been proposed is going to be, they'll have access off of Food Court. It will not come all the way out to Webster, and it will not come all the way to Drumheller. So it'll be the southwest corner of the former Lind Farm property. That helps everybody.
Yeah, we're working on putting it up on the screen. Let's give our SCUMA director a chance to talk here. Anything else, Miles, before we transition? All right, while our guest is speaking, I'll have Karen throw that up on the screen so we all can see better what the land that we're talking about is. Next up on our agenda is Brad Gursky, our administrator from SCUMA, our sewer system that Bath Charter Township owns a portion of, to talk about some of the concerns that have been raised. Take it over, Brad.
Thank you, trustees. Tonight, I was asked to talk a little bit about norm fasteners and the potential risks related to norm fasteners discharge. To put it mildly, this is not anything new to the region. Metal finisher facilities are all over in Michigan. It's not a new industry. It may be new to Bath. So the dealings with the discharge from a facility like this is been done before. This is nothing exotic. With that being said, we're very comfortable with what's been proposed from norm fasteners as discharge. And we'll be regulating that utilizing the code and ordinances through Bath Township. That's highlighted in Chapter 74 and Article 3, and starting in Section 71 down to 142. This gives us all the ability to regulate the discharge from norm fasteners, including stopping the discharge. So that gives us basically full control of the facility if need be. That being said, we plan to regulate them through an IPP process, which is called the Industrial Pretreatment Program. SCUMA has one. We utilize individual permits throughout the communities we govern and provide service to. This will not be our first, nor will it be our last. IPP, significant industrial user. This is not even won't even be the biggest. So with that being said, we're comfortable in what's being proposed. And to speak a little bit more related to PFAS, as I hear that's the concern. A little bit of background with PFAS related to metal finishing in general is actually the chemicals related to PFAS that are associated with metal finishing actually had nothing to do with the metal finishing itself. It actually was a surfactant put into the dip tanks to prevent the chromium acids and the products through the vapor being vaporized into the workers' atmosphere. So it was really a device for health control within the facility and nothing related to the actual process of metal finishing. That being said, most of them have all been eliminated, if not all. So really the metal finishing sites, although historically have been an issue related to PFAS, it was really the mishandling of the byproducts related to those dip tanks. And nothing associated actually with the dip tank chemical or the processing of that metal itself. So that's where the history comes from related to metal finishing. So moving forward, metal finishers has actually dropped kind of significantly off the list. Originally in the PFAS world, it was a significant target. It has slowly been being dropped off. There's a lot of historical sites related to it, but industries that have it now, there is treatment if they still have some type of byproduct they're not able to completely get rid of. But again, the metal finishing world is actually fairly simple to deal with. We have other sites that do have PFAS. It's something that we all have dealt with and worked with in our lives for the last many decades. And it changes. So that's what makes it a difficult thing to treat. The fluorine-carbon bond is the most difficult bond known to human to break. So dealing with it is a long-term impact. So understanding the risk, but with this particular environment, we don't typically see too much of a risk in the modern history.
Brad, would you know if PFAS were put into your system?
Yes. So we're required to test on a quarterly basis. We used to be monthly because we do have an industry that has a PFAS, a long-term PFAS issue. So we were obviously targeted originally from Eagle. Since then, we've been able to reduce that through best management practice, working with that customer. And ultimately, it's trying to figure out the best treatment process long term. It's all regulated by the water quality standards provided by Eagle. Currently, the water quality for The most significant related PFAS-associated chemical, PFOS, is 11. 12 for non-drinking water, but we stay with 11 because that's drinking water. That's for surface water discharge. That's what we're governed by. So, as far as dealing with it, you know, we've been at the forefront of it. And again, we don't have a background in Bath right now because we individually have tested each community to try to find out, okay, we want to identify anything in that might potentially be there. Because car washes are a big one that are starting to be picked up on the PFAS world. Bath has a non-detectable limit right now. So, with that being said, if Norm comes on, we will have an IPP permit with them that which will be testing their discharge and their discharge only. They cannot exceed water quality standards, and if they do, we have the full force and right to stop their discharge. But I do not see that being an issue, and if it is, we will deal with it appropriately.
Are all of the potential conditions to help us not have to deal with it built into the 18 that we have in front of us?
No, it has nothing to do with that, and not that it's not there. Everything we need is in your code of ordinances.
Got it. So this isn't anything special. The ordinances already exist.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Okay?
You said 11, is that parts per million,
Parts per
billion?
trillion.
Trillion, okay.
Very, very small number. It's a very small number. And the interesting, I mean, I feel like I'm giving a PFAS tutorial here. The interesting thing about PFAS, and we've learned through our facility, which I find fascinating, is since it's a carbon-initiated bond, we have the ability to treat carbon particles. So actually in our facility, carbon particle is actually transferred amongst itself. So actually the chemical chain changes through our facility. So what comes in is maybe not PFAS, and one of the other thousands of analytes related to PFAS can convert to PFAS or PFOA. And that's done too. That's what makes it very difficult. But again, in related to Norm fastener, that the history of metal finishing doesn't show that it's a long-term concern.
Kate's the one of us with a science degree that probably understood all of what you just said.
I
So it's
did.
really helpful to have her on the board.
I teach organic chemistry, so I do have some understanding of
She can
PFAS.
give some tutorials to us later. Other questions for Brad or Skooma? All right, thank you for being here.
Yeah,
Will you
thank you.
stick around a little bit too, in case we want to bring you back?
Absolutely, I'll be here all night. Well, through this time.
Good clarification. I know the developers are here, so I'd like to bring them up to the lectern.
You want me to quickly talk about location?
Oh, sure, go ahead, thank you, yes.
Yeah, so I'll just point out, so generally speaking, it's gonna be this area of the site. The structure itself will primarily be located centrally within the site itself, and it will gain access off of food court here, and they will be coming off of the circle drive there. The drive will come off of that. So
And just to orient people, that's Webster Road running.
this is Webster Road here, this is the Somerset development here, which you might be familiar with, and then the township is just where the search bar is up there. Yep. And that's us, we're in this building right now. So hopefully that's helpful. Were you able to hear me, sir? Okay, were you able to hear me when I described? Okay, all right, sorry.
Thanks, Miles.
Yep, thank you.
Would a representative of the developer like to talk about the project briefly?
Sure, I'll keep it brief. Jeff Dean, Demaxian Development. I'd like to take a moment and thank the township staff. We have been talking about this project for about 11 months. This project has existed in our world for actually about 3 years. So although it may feel a little bit new to the township inside of those 11 months, we have been working on it for a number of years. I'd also like to thank the Planning Commission, some of which have taken the time to come here tonight. We spent a tremendous amount of time with each individual planning commissioner, giving them an in-depth concept of what we're doing here. So this included a virtual reality tour of an existing facility. This included an unlimited time frame question and answer session, as well as access directly to the company and directly to our development company. And I'd like to just also thank the trustees, because many of the trustees here tonight have taken the time to do that as well. So if anyone in the community feels that maybe any of these staff or bodies have not taken appropriate amount of time to try to understand this issue, I assure you that me individually, I think I've spent 100 or 200 hours conversing with them about this. So I think that the Planning Commission vote to kick this up to the Board of Trustees was an educated vote, and it was not easy. We had to work very hard to explain every single possible detail that was asked to us by the Planning Commission in detail. So I did hear in the last board meeting, there was a question, why a Turkish company in Bath Township? Norm Fasteners has actually a 20-year relationship with our company. The current CEO and president of the company, who's the third generation of the company, actually was a former Bath Township resident and a Michigan State graduate. So there's a, excuse me, there's a long tie to the community here that's deeper than just a faceless corporation coming here and trying to do business. And I think that's something that we as the folks that live in this area can take a little bit of comfort in, knowing that this isn't just some faceless and nameless corporation. Last meeting, Trustee Kellerman did bring up the issue of PFAS, which we've been working very diligently to understand and to communicate all of the details surrounding that issue to anyone who has questions about that, members from the community as well as trustees and even planning commissioners that had already voted on it. I'd like to, really stress that Norm is a family company and has a deep commitment to what they're trying to do in this community. And that's evident in their sustainability report, which we've made available and is available and published on their website. I hope that some of you that have concerns about this project have taken the time to review that. It really says a lot about what kind of company Norm Fasteners is. So this project's a major win for Bath Township, for all of us, really. Us as a development company, Bath as a community. It creates, millions of dollars in funding opportunities for the schools, millions of dollars in funding opportunities for really complex and difficult infrastructure projects in the township, and also creates 200 jobs and a lot of opportunities for residents in the future. So I'm here to answer any questions for the remainder of the night or in the future. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Folks, why don't you stay there, Jeff, in case folks have questions now? Questions for the developer? All right, I guess you can sit down.
False alarm, okay.
Beth, would you mind giving us some of your information now? We're going to take these decision by decision, but I think it's helpful to see the full picture of what we're doing here. So this is related to items II and III and IV.
Okay. So, so first, when you have a Public Act 198, or other known as an IFT abatement tax, first there's a request for a district. If the district is not already created. At this site here, there was not a district created. So that's your first one that you have in front of you, your resolution to establish industrial development district. So my recommendation would be to adopt that resolution, creating that district. Your III, your resolution to accept the application that was presented by Norm Fasteners is that next resolution. And that made me my recommendation to accept that resolution. And then IV, the contract for tax abatement, that's a letter agreement between the applicant and Bath Township. So those are 3 items that then, once those are passed, those will move on to the State Tax Commission for their approval. So the approval isn't done here tonight. As an absolute, it just gives that support and recommendation and the processes to move forward to that next step.
Thank you. Questions for the assessor? You had mentioned, Beth, that at the last meeting, this is a tax abatement, not a, I don't know what the word would be for no tax, right? It's some tax, not
Yes.
all tax being abated.
The Public Act 198 IFT tax, it's a separate roll, so it has half millages for all of your collecting entities except for the state tax, or state education tax, your SET tax. So the schools at the state level would still be held whole on their full amount that they receive. The school district as itself, as it collects from Bath schools, they would be at the 50% rate.
Great. And that would start in 2024?
It would start in 2025.
Okay.
This tax day will be December 31st, and this won't be through the State Tax Commission before then.
Okay, so then.
But there's nothing going to be there on December
Right.
31st, so we'll be taxing as just the land itself as it is.
So there will be taxing in 24 of the land. Starting in 25, there will be a 50%, except for the state education tax collected for 12 years, which puts us into what, 37?
Well, because you'll be under construction, because tax day is December 31st, so we won't have anything started before December 31st of 2023. They'll be under construction. I don't believe that any of the developers will be that quick to get it done within that 1-year time frame. So they have 2 years that they could be under construction. So it really could be 14 years. So they could have 2 years under construction and then 2 years as a complete to start their for their full 12 years.
So then it could be
So-
2026 that the 50% would kick in for 12 years, which would
Mhm.
take us to 2038?
Yes.
So in 2038, Bath Township and the other taxing authorities would see 100% of the tax capture?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Questions from my colleagues? Thanks, Beth. Very understandable. I appreciate that. Miles, did you have anything else to wrap up tonight on this project particular?
No, if there's no further questions, just.
And to be clear, your department, you as the planner, are recommending us to move forward with the 18 conditions you've laid out, and you as our representative, as the board, sees this as a win for us. I don't want to put words in your mouth, I'm just trying to clarify that
Yeah,
as staff, who are the staff of our board, you're saying that this is a good thing.
Yeah, that was our recommendation to the planning commission, that is the planning commission's recommendation to this board, so they concur with our recommendation.
okay.
And just as staff, and I don't want to speak on behalf of the planning commission, we do feel like this is a pretty ironclad set of conditions that we've placed on this development. So we feel confident that we have, as staff, the tools in our toolbox to move this development through the construction phase and get what was promised to this community out of the development firm.
All right, thank you. John, since you're here tonight, do you have anything you want to say on behalf of the planning commission?
No, I do not at this time.
Great, thanks.
Thank you for asking.
So let's take these one at a time. Superintendent, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Sherry.
Is there going to be a performance bond or liability bond that
Miles.
protects us?
I did hear that that issue got raised over the week. That is not a condition that we've put in our recommendation to the planning commission, not that they've recommended. I think that what a performance bond would do is shore up the liability that a municipality could incur from a development being half complete. That wasn't something that we necessarily thought was at a high risk with this development. And in the unlikely, and we do feel like it's unlikely, scenario that we did incur a half-built development here, I guess I'll phrase it like this. So when developments get built, you can have a niche product built. We don't feel like the product that's being built here is particularly niche. It's basically a giant white box, very close to highway access. If this was to somehow go bust and the building was half constructed, we feel like it would very likely be picked up by another development firm and they just adopt a plan as is and develop a white box. It's a very standard and usable product across many industries. So the risk level to the municipality was just seen as extremely low.
Thanks, Miles. Go ahead, Sherry.
Second question would be the bond for endangering our community. Third question is, I understand there's going to be a strip mall in front of this that will be like a barrier to not even see the big building in the back, is what I was informed of. And I worry a little bit about a strip mall when we're just, what happened at Marsh Road and Hazlitt Road is they just tore it out because it wasn't working as a strip mall. We didn't see a need for it, I guess. It's gone.
Well, I guess to the strip mall portion of this, there have been some renderings that have been displayed to the community, but yeah, you go ahead. If that's okay with the board.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so just to clarify, there has been talk of a commercial step-down use between the industrial facility and Webster Road. That land is currently not under contract by us and still owned by the current landowner, who's Mr. Kessler. But we've been working collaboratively with him to try to figure out a step-down use between the facility that we're building and Webster Road, just to make it more appealing to the community of Bath. So these things, yes, have been discussed, and we've even worked on some renderings and some conceptual master planning, but none of that is in stone. Thank you.
And Miles, that would need to come back through the planning commission and then to us before that would happen?
That was about to be my follow-up point, which if, in lieu of anything that would possibly move forward at a future date in that area or in that, space as it relates to that type of land use within the development district would be a land use permitted by special use permit, and as was stated, would have to go through all the appropriate bodies and be approved. So,
Thanks,
if
Miles.
it wasn't a good fit for the community at that time, it could be litigated out.
Thank you. Sherry, did that answer all your questions?
Yeah.
Other questions to any of our guests? All right, so what we have here is 4 separate decisions. We're going to take these in order.
Sorry. May I ask a question too? I forget who it was about, whoever has more of the science knowledge regarding the building that's going to be put in, and it's close.
This is not technically the place for this, but let me check with my colleagues. Do folks mind if we have another question from the audience?
Heck, no.
No. All right, would you step up to so the camera can see you and folks can hear you?
My name is Megan Steger, but I guess my question is, I don't know a lot about PFAS, but I did hear that there would be discharge that was released, and I guess my question is, where would that discharge go? Because my little bit of knowledge is that it doesn't ever go away. So how do they decrease the amounts enough to discharge it somewhere, wherever that may be? And how would that land be usable? How would it not go into the drinking water, and how would the animals not consume it? And I have also briefly read that it can go up and be carried and released as rainwater in other areas. So how is that prevented?
Thank you. Great questions. I think, Brad, you're probably the best situated to answer those. Please.
Can you hear me? Good?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll have to bend over a little bit here, sorry. To answer your question, related to the discharge from Norm Fasteners, there should be 0 PFAS related to that discharge. If there was some type of detection there, treatment would then have to be installed at the facility itself to then get to a 0 discharge to the community's discharge. So there really is no concern downstream. If you were to take a worst-case scenario outside of Norm, if it was to get downstream, actually where all the water goes from Bath Township is traveled across the county to DeWitt Township and then discharged into the Looking Glass River. At this time, the discharge, like I said, the discharge limits previous stated was 11 and 12 for PFOS, for water quality standards in the state, which is far lower than EPA regulations.
How do you decrease the level though, if you can't ever get rid of it? I guess that's what I don't understand.
There is treatment for it. Activated carbon, so carbon itself, they run it through carbon filters. There's a couple other technologies, all related around carbon right now. There is filtration for it that captures the carbon. It is then treated through typically a high heat process. But that is nothing under the purview of which SCUMA would do. That would be a private operation held through someone else.
Thanks, Brad. Go ahead.
And I think maybe just some clarification that the water we're talking about is going into the sewer. It's not runoff, it's not getting dumped out the back door into the former field area that might then percolate through the ground and make its way into water sources that could be accessible to the rest of us. This is what they're discharging. I think when they use that terminology, that means into the sewer system, which has multiple stop gaps along the way, checkpoints, so to speak, to see what's in it and to take care of it before it ever makes it to the Looking Glass River, if that's correct.
Thanks, Brad. All right, so what we have today is four separate discussions, four separate decisions. The first is about the land use that we will or will not approve. The second is about the creation of an industrial development district. The third is about the acceptance of the industrial facility exemption, and the fourth is the agreement to tax abatement. So that's one project, but four separate decisions. Karen, is that fair to summarize as?
That's correct.
All right, do you have anything to add before we move into action, if we so choose?
Do not at this time unless our planner or our assessor feel like they need to have anything else, a rebuttal to anything else that's been said tonight.
Looks like no. So, board colleagues, how do you want to handle this? The first decision in front of us is the special use permit, which is the land use. Happy to have discussion, happy to have motion, then a discussion. We move at the pace you set.
I would be comfortable discussing and voting in
Make
a
a motion.
omnibus fashion, I suppose.
Okay?
I'm sorry, just to clarify, the first one here is the resolution for the establishment of the industrial development district?
No, the special use permit.
Oh, I'm
It's
sorry,
gotta be
right here,
first,
it's, I've checked off. Okay, thank you. All right. I'll move to adopt the special use permit.
Would you include the 18 conditions set?
And recommendation for the conditional improvement of special use permit.
I certainly will.
Yeah.
Thank you. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
All right, so the motion is to approve the special use permit that's been presented to us with the 18 conditions placed upon the project. Questions, discussion, concerns? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I just feel that as a very recent addition to the Board of Trustees, that I should probably just clarify or explain what I've done in the past couple weeks before this vote, so it's not seen as uninformed. In the time since, I don't know, was it 2 weeks ago, I guess? I've read all the minutes from the Planning Commission meetings leading up to this related to Norm Fasteners, as well as the Board of Trustees meeting minutes where I was not present. I went to Norm Fasteners and took the virtual tour and brought my questions with me and was able to get answers to all of them. I've researched PFAS and current PFAS regulations in the state of Michigan. Although I do have some chemical understanding of PFAS, I'm certainly not an environmental chemist by any means. But I definitely want to clarify that I feel like I have done my homework, so to speak, before I vote, just because I'm new and I think I owe it to the people, especially since I wasn't elected. I think I owe it to the people I'm representing to clarify that I'm taking this very seriously. I think it's an important vote for our community, and I want to make sure that I'm well prepared.
Thank you. On behalf of the interns who take the minutes at the Planning Commission, they thank you. It's nice to have their work recognized. All right, so we've got a motion and a second. Any other discussion before we move forward? All right, let's do a roll call vote then, please.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Ms. Kellerman?
No.
Ms. Hagerman?
Yes.
Ms. Butler Challenger, yes. Mr. Funes Bliss?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, that brings us to the next item for action, the resolution for the establishment of the Industrial Development District for Norm Fasteners. This is what our assessor presented to us. Is there discussion or a motion to be made on this piece of the project?
I make a motion to adopt the resolution to establish Norm Fastener Company Industrial Development District.
I will second that motion.
So we have a motion and a second. Are there questions, discussion, concerns? All right, hearing none, we'll move to a roll call vote as well.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes?
Ms. Kellerman?
No.
Ms. Hagerman?
Yes.
Ms. Butler Challenger, yes. Mr. Funes Bliss?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, the resolution passes. The next item is the resolution for the industrial facilities exemption certificate. Is there discussion or a motion to be had on this topic?
Mr. Chairman, I'll move to adopt the resolution for industrial facilities exemption certificate for Norm Fasteners.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there discussion, questions from the board? Hearing none, we'll do a third roll call vote.
Ms. Kellerman?
No.
Ms. Hagerman?
Yes.
Ms. Butler Challenger, yes. Mr. Funes Bliss?
Yes,
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Thank you.
the resolution passes. The last piece of business for this project is the contract for tax abatement. Is there a discussion or a motion to be made about this topic?
I'll make a motion to approve the contract for the tax abatement. I'm trying to say abatement.
I'll support it.
All right, we have a motion and support. Are there any discussion, questions, concerns from the board on this last piece of the project in front of us tonight? All right, let's do one more roll call vote.
Ms. Hagerman?
Yes.
Ms. Butler Challenger, yes. Mr. Funes Bliss?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Ms. Kellerman?
No.
All right, the motion passes. That brings us to a different topic. We're moving on from Norm Fasteners to a resolution around adopting guidelines for the, yes?
You may want to take a short recess.
So they can leave.
Okay,
I believe you're going to have quite a few people leave the meeting at this point.
okay. If folks need to shimmy out, feel free to do that. If you want to have conversation, I'd encourage you to do it in the parking lot, not out here. The noise carries. Thanks, Brad.
Sorry to interrupt you.
That's okay.
Good idea. Really, yes.
I thought while we had a captive audience, we'd keep moving.
Sorry.
Tank of water Jacqueline's drinking?
I know. It's like a gallon.
It's like a gas for your grill.
It was a gallon.
It's like a propane tank.
Sorry about that. I can't shut my teacher.
You shouldn't.
No.
You shouldn't.
We want your input like that. That's what we
No,
need.
that's perfect, Kay.
You gotta move to the township now.
It's close. It's not too far out.
Post doesn't count. Hey. All right, folks, let's mosey on out. All right. For those diehards that are sticking with us, thank you. That brings us to a resolution for adopting the guidelines for the 2024 poverty exemptions. Will the assessor join us one more time?
Prepared for you tonight is a resolution to adopt the federal poverty guidelines. These are set by the State Tax Commission, or actually set by the federal government, adopted by the State Tax Commission. And last year, as the board, adopted, you can adopt something that's higher than the federal poverty guidelines, but you can't adopt something that's lower than the federal poverty guidelines. We had some the previous year applications that came in, People were just under that threshold, but we knew that they were struggling, so that was what was proposed to you last year. We adapted the guidelines to be 10% higher, so that's what I have prepared for you again. This year, we have not had the same applications come in, so I can't tell you that it has helped or it hasn't helped. We actually haven't approved any this year. We have one coming up in December for the board of review to make a determination on. So I went ahead and I prepared your resolution with that 10% increase on there. It didn't bring them in by the strobes, but it's just something out there to help others in struggling need. And actually, I think with the way the economy is right now and all the inflation, we may see this need be a little bit more needed in the future, unfortunately.
Beth, how do taxpayers find out about this?
Well, I'll meet with people to educate them on that it is available. It's on our website. A lot of people that come to us, a lot of them hear from like the state services, because every community has this, not just Bath Township. So it's statewide. We don't go out and solicit, but we don't keep it a hidden secret either. It is on, like I said, it's on our website. They did regulate the applications, I think 3 years ago, so every municipality's applications are the same. It's a state form application. Prior to that, Ron, you probably remember, or other board members may remember, that we adopted our applications each time with this, but now we're not. It's regulated a little bit more by the state.
Would you be open to putting it in the next newsletter?
We could put it in the newsletter if that's something that the board wishes.
Okay. Or whatever timely newsletter makes sense for the process?
Are there any resources to help people fill out the application or obtain the needed documentation, deeds and things like that? People might not just have those?
I'll sit down with them and I will help go through that step by step. I don't do it for them, but I do guide them so that we have that available. And like I said, people that are on different services, those people will sit down with them as well. I have that in other communities that I work in where I'll give them the application, then they bring it back to me with somebody else that has filled it out for them.
Is there any downside to approving this?
You gotta approve something. You could either prove it at the rate that it is, you can prove it at the 10% higher that we have presented, or you could decide on a different percent higher that you wanted or a different amount. It's one of our statutory duties to adopt the guidelines to set before us.
Thank you. Any other questions from the team? All right, is there further discussion or a motion to be made on this resolution?
I'll make a motion to approve the adoption of Resolution 2023-13 to adopt guidelines for the 2024 poverty exemption to be implemented by the Board of Review.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion or questions to be had? All right, let's do another roll call vote.
Ms. Butler Challenger, yes. Mr. Funes Bliss?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Ms. Kellerman?
Yes.
Ms. Hagerman?
Yes.
Thank you.
Next up on our agenda is the adoption of the 2024 budget, which is, like the Norm Fasteners, broken down into multiple decisions. There's 6 decisions in front of us, which you can see on page 3 of the agenda. The resolution for the General Appropriations Act, the exemption for publicly funded health insurance, township supervisor salary, clerk salary, treasurer salary, and trustee salary. Superintendent Hildebrand, do you want to kick us off?
I would, thank you. The version that you have tonight, and it was uploaded with the packet, has 2 changes from it since you last saw it at the board meeting 2 weeks ago. That includes the removal of the longevity increase to the clerk's salary, and it also carried over the decision that you made at the last meeting for Ann Drive. It carried the ARPA funds into next year, so they were held to complete the project in 2024. if there are questions on what you have in front of you, I'd be happy to assist.
On the longevity pay, I just wanted to say that I spoke with the clerk, I spoke with the superintendent. We collectively agreed that the longevity pay was designed for staff and not elected officials. And that's how that decision was made. You all could decide that you want to put it back in, but that's the determination we decided to present you with tonight. Karen, I can't find quickly in my packet the amount that we're, oh, I found it, here it is. So the total budget we would be pulling out of the multiple fund balances is just over $1.6 million. Is that fair to say?
It is correct, but it will be based on the amount of fund balance that is available, not only from last fiscal year for police and fire, which we know is the public safety fund, but also the amount at the end of the audit for 2023. There will be an additional amount available to offset that draw from fund balance.
So we had budgeted last year to cut pretty deep into the fund balance again. For this fiscal year, do you think that we have actually not cut into the fund balance and we might be putting more into it?
We didn't, I believe it was approximately $200,000 that we drew from the fund balance to cover expenses last year, and I do foresee there being a similar lessening of that obligation to pull from fund balance,
Okay.
from the general fund balance.
Thank you. Questions, thoughts from the group? If we're ready to move forward with some action tonight, the first resolution is on the General Appropriations Act. And I'd be looking for a motion on what to do with that.
I'll move the adoption of the resolution for the General Appropriations Act.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there discussion, questions, comments about this resolution? I'll just say that with us pulling a projected 1.6 million out of the fund balances, we're gonna have to talk about revenue here probably in this next year, because we can't pull 1.6 million out for very many more times.
If I may, our millage for police and fire will be expiring next year, and it will need to be on the ballot, so the time is right to have that discussion.
Great. All right, any other questions, comments about Resolution 2023-14? All right, let's do another roll call vote.
Mr. Funes
Yes.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Ms. Kellerman?
Yes.
Ms. Hagerman?
Yes.
Ms. Butler Challenger, yes.
Item 2 with the budget is the exemption from publicly funded Health Insurance Contribution Act. Can you give us a brief overview of that, Superintendent?
I can, thank you for allowing me to do so. So the township undertakes the entire cost of health care for its employees, and because it does so, it must exempt itself from the state requirements. We adopt this every year in order to be able to continue to do that. I would also suggest that as we look to the future, we also look at this cost. Unfortunately, over the last couple of years, the increases to our health care have come at double-digit numbers. This year is no different at 13.9% increase. So I do believe that there will be a time in the near future where employees may need to start sharing the cost of that with the township in order to bring that cost down.
Thank you. Questions on that resolution or a motion to be made?
I'll make a motion to adopt resolution number 2023-15.
Is there a second?
I'll support it.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion on resolution number 2023-15? All right, let's do another roll call vote.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Ms. Kellerman?
Yes.
Ms. Hagerman?
Yes.
Ms. Butler Challenger, yes. Mr. Funes Bliss?
Yes. That brings us to item 3, the resolution to establish the township supervisor's salary. The next 4 items are establishing the board member's salary individually by role. Discussion or a motion on that resolution, which should be 2023-16.
What is it now?
In your budget, it would have said.
I can find it.
3% lower than this, right?
Yeah, yes, exactly.
Oh, okay, this is adding 3%.
Yes,
Okay.
to each of the next 4.
Okay.
So it was.
2023 budget was $18,669.
It's on page 7 of your budget.
Yes.
Other questions, discussion, or motions to be made?
I'll make a motion to adopt resolution 2023-16 for the supervisor's salary.
I will second that motion.
There's a motion and a second. Is there further discussion? All right, let's do a roll call vote.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Ms. Kellerman?
Yes.
Ms. Hagerman?
Yes.
Ms. Butler Challenger, yes. Mr. Funes Bliss?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Thank you.
That brings us to item 4, the resolution establishing the township clerk's salary, which is resolution number 2023-17. Is there discussion or a motion to be made on handling that?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the resolution? Hearing none, we'll take a roll call vote.
Ms. Kellerman?
Yes.
Ms. Hagerman?
Yes.
Ms. Butler Challenger, yes. Mr. Funes Bliss?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Thank you, that passes. Item 5 is a resolution establishing the township treasurer's salary, and that would be resolution 2023-18. Is there discussion or a motion to be made there?
So move again, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. There's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Second.
And a second. Is there any other discussion on resolution number 2023-18? Hearing none, we'll take a roll call vote.
Ms. Hagerman?
Yes.
Ms. Butler Challenger, yes. Mr. Funes Bliss?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Ms. Kellerman?
Yes.
That resolution passes. And final piece of the budget tonight is the resolution to establish the township Office of Trustee salary, so for our 4 trustees, and that is resolution 2023-19. Is there discussion or a motion to be made about this resolution?
Oh.
Yes, ma'am.
I would offer to you that an additional sentence has been added to this in the 3rd paragraph, be it resolved that trustees shall also be paid for their attendance at meetings of township boards, commissions, and committees as assigned. That was not in there prior, and there seems to be a question over the last couple of years of whether or not they received that payment along with the other members of committees. So I wanted it to be clear and held in the resolution.
Our practice has been to pay for that.
It has been,
Yes.
yes,
So in a sense, we're not changing anything, we're just codifying what we've been doing.
correct.
I'm sorry, Jack, go ahead.
No, I just have a question. I understand that as assigned, we're just not gonna hopscotch around to any meeting that we want to, but there are some that are, I think, a little bit more important that help us to formulate our decisions. And I would like to be able to include those, like, for example, if you're going to go to a particular planning commission meeting because you need more information to make those decisions. I don't know how the rest of the
I like
board
that.
feels about that, but
For any of the attend.
You mean that if it's not a committee you're assigned to, but
Go anyway.
you're
Is that what you?
attending related to board?
yeah, that's how I'm trying to
Topics?
say it, yeah. And I know there's some danger in that, trying to, I guess for lack of a better word, build your paycheck. But I don't see that happening. I really
No.
don't.
That's a lot of time to put in for.
Yeah, for what you
For
get.
the amount of money.
Exactly. And no, I agree with you. So I don't know what people's sense of that
Well,
is.
you and I went to that one, and it was helpful to learn more things to bring back here.
Superintendent, we're currently using meeting minutes to tell who is at their committee meetings to pay for that. How would you?
Correct. I would recommend that if you attend, such as a meeting of the planning commission, that you would just mention it to Miles that you're in attendance, so it can be captured in the minutes.
Okay.
So do we need to change the wording in this one, though?
Yes.
Because it says
Yes,
assigned,
as assigned,
or should we just say
I
be
just-
paid for their attendance at
As
meetings?
attended.
I just want to get everybody's, I mean, I don't want to just throw this out there and everybody thinks, yeah, I mean, I really want your sincere feelings about this. If you think just leave it as assigned, that's fine. I just wanted to throw it out there to see what people thought about it.
One of my thought is, if it would encourage us to go, it spreads more knowledge around on this board to bring back to your opinion at the meeting, my opinion. We can put those out there. And I think it's a great idea, if it would encourage it a little bit.
Mr. Chairman, I'd really like your input on this.
I think that makes a ton of sense. I think Sherry said it perfectly. If it is encouraging us to get out and listen and participate in the other meetings, I think that's a win for the board.
Okay.
Additionally, I don't know what your past practice is, but if one of us is unable to go to our assigned meetings, would we ask if someone else were interested in filling in?
Yeah, or sick.
No, we don't do
No?
proxies because you
Okay.
haven't been appointed, so you wouldn't have a vote on that committee.
Oh, okay.
But it certainly could be, you could sit in the audience and listen and give a public comment if you wanted.
Yeah. And
Are
we're-
folks comfortable editing that resolution then to take off the words "as assigned"?
I am.
Would someone be willing to put that into a motion with the change? This is Resolution 2023-19.
I'll stay the course, Mr. Chairman, and make that motion for that resolution.
Great.
Second.
So there's a motion and a second to adopt resolution number 2023-19 with the change in the last two words being removed from the third stanza, if you will, of the resolution. Questions, thoughts, comments? All right, let's do another roll call vote.
Ms. Butler Challenger, yes. Mr. Funes Bliss?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Ms. Kellerman?
Yes.
Ms. Hagerman?
Yes.
The resolution passes as amended. That ends our discussion of the budget for fiscal year '24. And the last item on items for action in old business is the 2024 Board of Trustees and committee meeting dates. Superintendent Hildebrandt, do you want to get us started?
I would, thank you. These were drafted by the deputy superintendent. I do not believe she heard from any of you if you located mistakes or inaccuracies in this, so we would be adopting this as is unless someone notes something tonight that we should correct. This document allows the township, I was asked this question this weekend, so it's very helpful and timely, because we don't notice each of our meetings. This is the document that we live by, and if there are changes to this schedule, for example, if we were to cancel a meeting that's listed on the schedule, or we were to call a special meeting that's not listed on the schedule, we would issue a public notice for that meeting. We don't issue public notices for regular meetings.
So for items such as the planning commission, which by this document would be planning to meet Christmas Eve, we would be leaving it up to them as a committee to change their own schedule.
Correct.
And then noticing would happen, we don't have to be part of that.
That is correct. And the Planning Commission is one that has done a very good job of noticing either the clerk's office or the deputy superintendent's office with changes to their regular schedule. I believe we'll probably be hearing from them shortly that they'll be canceling their meeting just prior to Christmas this year. And so, yes, the committees generally take responsibility for those and communicate those changes to staff.
I don't know, John told me he wanted to do Secret Santa this year.
Great idea.
All right, so you're looking for approval of that document?
I am, thank you.
And then, as the treasurer mentioned, we'll get dates for the finance committee once she lifts that up in the new year.
Yep.
Is there a motion or further discussion on that item?
I make a motion to accept the 2024 Board of Trustee and Committee meeting dates.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
I'll support that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor to approve the document titled Board of Trustees and Committee Meeting Dates for 2024. Any other discussion? All right, let's do a voice vote on this one. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that motion carries. That brings us to new business, item 14, if you're following along on your agenda. Item A is items for introduction and discussion. We have a sub-A, fourth quarter 2023 budget amendments. Superintendent Hildebrand.
Thank you. Tonight I did something a little different that I have not done in the past, but we have a couple of new board members, and I figured it would be helpful for them to understand how our finances work here at the township. The memo that you found in your packet referenced several items that go into managing year-end budgets here at the township. Our fiscal year is from January 1 to December 31st of each year. What is probably not common for most businesses or schools is there is a time frame in which 2023 items can be paid for from 2024. When I first came here, it was approximately 3 months for that to occur. I have dialed that back significantly to approximately 6 weeks, and now this year we'll probably be dialing it back to 4 weeks. So by the end of January 2024, your 2023 funds that you may have used will be invoiced and paid for. So that means we run a little risk in adopting budget amendments, even though we adopt our budget at a department level, which means overall, if the department is under budget, it is fine, even if a line item in that budget, and that's where I'll reference the document that was at your seat tonight, staff salaries, benefits, contractual and professional services. Even if any one of those line items runs over, but the department is still under budget, it is okay. Just wanted a brief explanation for you all. Some of the things that, as you read in your memo, that affect year end, and a lot of things occur at the year end. We are currently collecting taxes. There are still payrolls to be paid out. There's 2 of them in December. The committee member meeting attendance takes place during that time, so that can have an impact on the budget. The biggest one that can really have an impact is employee benefits. Employee benefits can be turned in through the end of March of the following fiscal year. So 2024, by March 31st, you have to have all of your medical expenses turned in. And I feel like it's not uncommon for all of you that have insurance to know that sometimes you don't get your explanation of benefits, or you don't get invoiced by your provider until sometime after you've had a service rendered by them. So that is something that we work with our employees on, and we pay those costs through the end of March. So that also has an impact on the end of the fiscal year. And it makes it very difficult to predict and anticipate those items. What I provided you tonight was my interpretation of items that may need your attention at our final board meeting. After December 18th, thank you, I appreciate you. After December 18th, no more modifications can be made to our budget unless we hold a special meeting and make a decision to do so. So that's kind of our last chance to make sure the budget is in alignment. So what I have in front of you tonight is those areas of concern that I see that may need your attention at the next board meeting. This took hours to prepare, and I don't say that to have you feel sorry for me. It's just a guessing game sometimes of, will there need more in this area for gasoline and fuel, or will they need more in benefits? And it's really just using my past experience and best judgment to try to make sure that we come in with a budget that is under budget, hopefully, and not over budget. Because over budget means we get dinged on our audit. So we try to avoid those at all costs.
When I was on the board for my first term back in 2012 to 2016, we were not in the habit of making these changes, and every audit had those dings on it that we were spending out of funds that we hadn't appropriately budgeted for. So this is a good practice that we have shifted from in the last decade since then.
Yes.
But I can vouch that I saw those dings on the audit every year.
Yeah. Prior to the end of the year, the treasurer and I will sit with our accounting firm and counsel with them about what they may see as trends coming or things that we should keep in mind. So we will obtain counsel from them as well as to how these should be adjusted prior to your next meeting so that you see the end product of that and can make an informed decision. I recognize that the 4 or 5 pages that you have in front of you is a lot, and you did not have a chance to go through it this evening, but I am available to you all to have those discussions, should you have questions or concerns about anything that you see here.
Well, you may not like this, but I really like this format. I don't want you to spend hours and hours every time we have to do this, but this is really, really helpful.
Something I appreciate that compliment. I also found it more helpful in you asking for the amended total or the original amount budgeted does offer you more insight into the budget. What I did as well is I tried to give you a current available balance because at your stations tonight was also a revenue expenditure report from the end of November 2023. So if you were to look at that department, you would see that amount that I've listed in the budget amendments as the final available balance to help. And what I'm indicating to you is that some departments will have enough money to cover their expenditures. Other departments will not have those same funds to cover. So I may be asking you at the next board meeting to shift some funds around within a department and to do so purposefully so that we can cover some of the shortages without taking additional monies from the general fund balance.
Got it. I have some other questions, but I know Jack has his hand up.
No, go ahead with yours.
Go ahead.
It's not uncommon in my experience that some department heads like to wait till the very end because they're looking at their budget and.
That's correct.
It can be the silent Santa appearance. So I just think it's important to make those department heads aware of the fact that they've got to really be on the ball with this.
I will be having those discussions. We do have 2 or 3 of those department heads that like to wait to see what their budget shakes out as. We have some very conservative department heads, and they will try to toe the line in the budget that they've been provided and worked out with me. But they do like to, just in case something happens throughout the year, some of them truly believe that, and I say they spend their money like they would spend their own personal money. They spend the township's money, and they're very conservative and they're very thoughtful in how they do that. They want to make sure that if something popped up throughout the year, that they could take care of that and then wait to see what they have available towards the end of the year to do that spending.
Thank you.
Other questions? I have a question on fund balance, which is what I always ask about, right?
Correct.
So you had just said that we only had budgeted to pull 200,000 out of fund balance. Were you talking about general fund balance?
No, I was referring to, I think, the public safety fund balance.
Okay, so on the public safety fund, it says year-to-date operating transfer from fund balance or general fund. So in this case.
Are you in the budget or are you in the?
No, I'm in the memo.
Okay, thank you.
Where you at, Ryan?
This
I
would
think-
be, it's highlighted in yellow, it's.
Okay.
Public safety fund.
Thank you.
So when you say 439,000 plus has been transferred, you're talking, that was transferred from the general fund?
What I have here is year-to-date revenues, year-to-date expenses, and then year-to-date operating transfer from fund balance. That has not occurred yet, but that is what has been budgeted to occur.
Oh, so it probably shouldn't be called year-to-date then, right?
It does say year-to-date operating transfer, I'm sorry.
But it actually,
But I
it
see-
hasn't happened.
It
is what
hasn't
you're
happened.
saying.
It's
Okay.
budgeted to happen, but it hasn't occurred yet.
From fund balance or general fund?
General fund
Got it.
balance.
Okay, from general fund balance.
Okay, yeah, now I'm understanding that better too. Thank you.
So it is a little bit more than 200 then, or am I missing the connection there?
It's difficult to answer that question because there are funds available in the public safety fund balance. So if there
Right.
are more funds available in the public safety fund balance, less needs to come from the general fund balance.
I see what you're saying. So you would anticipate we'd be pulling the 200 from the public safety fund balance?
Correct,
And then the additional 239 if we need all of that
If
from
you
the
need.
general fund balance?
correct.
Okay.
But as you can see in the memo currently, The police department is currently over $400,000 balance available.
So
And
then, I'm sorry to interrupt,
Yeah,
but just to
no,
clarify, the
no.
expenses are not year-to-date either. The expenses are budgeted.
Correct, budgeted, and this number is the approximate through the end of November.
And then are the revenues year-to-date, or are those budgeted too?
Those are year-to-date,
Okay, so year-to-date revenues, budgeted expenses.
Correct.
Budgeted use of fund balance.
correct.
Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure I'm looking at it the right way. So please continue.
No, if you have any other questions, I'd be happy to help.
So there's $416,000 left in that budget right
In
now.
the police department budget right now.
We had budgeted to take 439, so so that would mean that the public safety fund would have to spend $800,000 in the next few weeks in order to hit these numbers?
So that's correct. They would have to spend basically all of what's available in the police department and the fire department in order to need that transfer in.
Okay. Let's not encourage them to spend $800,000 in the next month.
We will not.
Don't tell them that it's there to spend.
Keep that a secret. Okay, so that, I'm just trying to wrap my head around with the language you were using before. That's why you believe that there will be fund balance left over from fiscal year '23 because we've got enough to cover.
Correct.
Okay. I am with you completely now.
Thank you. Any other questions? And not just tonight. If you have a question tomorrow or next week, or when the next packet comes out and the numbers look a little differently, we can talk about why that is. I am available to you and will help you through this, whether it's your first time or your 10th time through the budget process. It happens once a year, and it can be confusing and frustrating.
I know this was not in the packet this week. Will it be in the packet in 2 weeks so the public could also see it?
So what I will do is I will release it online as a document that was appended to this, along with a couple of other documents that were handed out tonight. And then an updated version of this will appear in your board packet with your other documents prior to your next board meeting.
So if residents are looking for it as of what, tomorrow they can get it online?
It will be an additional, yep, it'll just be in a different upload.
Great. Thank you. Really helpful. Any other last questions or comments about the fiscal year '23 budget amendments? All right, there's no items for action in new business. That brings us to the superintendent's report.
Thank you. Let me just flip to that page. There is a lot obviously occurring in the next few weeks to the end of the month of December. One of the main things that you'll be interested in is a revenue sharing report that's due to the state. All cities, villages, and townships that take revenue sharing money from the state need to complete that by December 7th. When I complete that document, I will share that document with all of you, and if you have any questions, please let me know. I'd be happy to meet with you on that as well. It also gets forwarded to the State Department of Treasury, and it is how we get a portion of our, not our statutory, but our revenue sharing, help me, non-statutory, I don't.
Is it the constitutional?
No, it's
no,
the other pot that we get money from. But it's approximately $10,000, but it's important for us to capture that $10,000. So we will complete those reports, and I will share those with you. Also at this time, tax collection, our tax bills have gone out now, and as of December 1st, our residents will be receiving those in the mail. I would encourage anyone who's listening to contact our treasurer or contact our assessor about the numbers that they're seeing on their tax bills if they have questions. I've seen our assessor meet with lots of people prior to their ability to come to board review, just to talk about why has that gone up, or why is it being valued the way it's being valued. During this time, the assessor will also be out in the field taking a look at people's houses. And I say that with an asterisk, because it's generally if people have made improvements on their homes and they've pulled a permit through our building department, that triggers her to go out and take a look at the work that's being done. Whether somebody added a deck or an addition, she will go out and take a look at those items and see if an adjustment needs to be made. She's required each year to go through a certain number of those visits to people's homes. And usually if people are home, she'll talk to them, and if they're not home, she leaves a card to let them know that she was on their property. So people are aware that she is out and about undertaking that, those measurements. Not to steal the clerk's thunder, but as she mentioned in the last meeting, we will have an election on February 27th. This office is supporting her in that effort, as many of the items and requirements have changed. So we are not only in tax collection mode, but we are also in election mode. So a little sooner than we're used to, but we're happy to help.
Karen?
Yes,
And that election is just the presidential primary, is that right?
That's correct.
Everything else is on the standard timeframe?
Yes.
as far as we know right now.
Make a change.
The legislature's out, so they can't make any
Okay,
other
then
changes
then
at
it's
this
all
point.
set.
They've gone home.
That's all set then. And we, our staff will continue, we have a meeting tomorrow morning regarding Norm Vassner's, and our work will continue. The Michigan Strategic Fund will meet on December 12th, and they are considering a $3.9 million bond for us to award to us to assist us with the infrastructure, sewer infrastructure that will be needed to accommodate Norm Fasteners in this community. We will also just be discussing the project in general and how that's going to move forward now that they've received approval from this body. But the MEDC, Michigan Strategic Fund, will also be considering almost $2 million in grant funds for them for their job creation. So there's a lot that still needs to be done. Our work will continue. And if you have any questions related to that or concerns, we'd be happy to have those as well. I have a feeling with the amount of larger projects that are going to occur next year, we will be having regular updates, and I probably will be providing you with written updates in your board packet so you have an understanding of what's happening with Webster Road, because that will require sewer lining and some road work. We will be planning for Chandler Road in the following year, so there will be a lot of work on that. And then we will be obviously undertaking a very large development that will try to get off the ground at the same time we're trying to do sewer improvements. So it's going to be a very, very busy year. As you all know, Safe Routes to School will also be implemented next year, so that will have a big impact on our community as well. So I think updates for you all in a written format so that you can ask questions at the meeting will probably be helpful for you all, or you are also welcome to come in and have conversations with me regarding that. We are already working towards our 2023 audit with our auditors. I had communication today from our auditing firm to engage in those things that we need to prepare for them and a date. We're looking at the beginning of April, and that'll be a discussion that the treasurer and clerk and I have about when we think our office will be available to accommodate that. It's very time intensive, and usually people have to stop what they're doing to provide material to the auditors. So it's important work, but it also interrupts our daily operations. So we try to be as accommodating as possible. Any questions?
My auditor at my organization was in today, so I feel what you're saying very
I saw his name and
closely.
I think I had a little palpitation. It's like, oh no.
So far, so good. I would encourage you to think about staffing next year. I know you've added some positions that we've approved, which is great. I am concerned about the number of projects we have shifted to you, especially the huge list of ARPA projects that we've shifted. So,
Correct.
you know, I think the board would be open to at least hearing if we need some contractual help or something, somebody to project manage these things so that we don't end up not being able to complete them all because we just have, you know, overwhelmed staff.
Yeah.
That's something I think will
appreciate
happen
that.
real quick with the roads, with the other projects, with planning commission stuff. So if there's a way that we can be helpful with that, I think we should be proactive rather than reactive.
I
with
do
that.
appreciate that. Our staff, I refer to our staff, several of us have been discussing, we have some maternity leaves that we'll be experiencing in the beginning of the year and how we will cover those, in addition to some hiring. But we are looking at how we can shift things around and make sure that we are meeting those deadlines to complete those projects because I think they're vital to our community.
I've worked with a temp agency here in Lansing that has supported my organization when we have maternity leaves or other things like that. So again, I would just encourage, learning from my own mistakes, foresee those problems and try to solve them before they turn into real big problems.
I appreciate that, thank you.
Other questions for the superintendent?
No.
I know that there's a holiday market coming up and a tree lighting. I don't have those
Correct.
dates written down. Do you happen to know them off the top of your head?
I do, I saw one of them on the calendar earlier, and I almost thought about bringing that up,
Tree
but,
lighting's tomorrow.
The tree
isn't it?
lighting's tomorrow.
yeah.
Right.
And then the
26
holiday
to 8.
market,
It's the 14th.
14th.
thank you,
at
So
the
holiday
community center.
market, 14th Community Center, tree lighting tomorrow at the
Cousins
park.
Park.
Cousins Park.
And I believe that the church, as well as the library, all have events that will surround and support that event as well.
Yes, and I just read online today that the church was asking to reserve their spaces at their church for elderly and folks who need
Yeah, I saw that.
better access.
I think
so
that's a good
help
idea.
amplify that message. It's great. So fun, exciting things happen in the community
Correct,
in the next couple of weeks.
yes.
Great. If there's nothing else, we'll move into the second public comment. All right. This is the time in the agenda where you can come up and have 3 minutes to talk about anything that you wish to talk about to us. Again, if you could introduce yourself and then roll right in.
Questions is all I have. I believe I heard that you were gonna have to pull 1.4 million out of the general fund balance, is that correct? For 2024?
1.6 out of the various fund balances.
And it's just, I haven't studied this stuff since college, so. At one time, there was a general fund balance, I believe, that was excessive in regards to a formula that comes out with a percentage of a total budget or something of that nature. Do you remember? You and I talked about that, I think.
Yeah, I wouldn't use the word excessive. I would say it
Well-
exceeded the threshold that the board has set to force us to make a decision on how to use it,
On how to
which I
use
think
it,
is
yeah.
25%.
Correct. A previous board adopted a resolution calling for anything over 25% to have a discussion. We far exceeded that number several years ago, and we continue to add to that number, so.
Really?
We have.
That's a good
up
thing.
Up until this last year, when I think we took $200,000 out. But I try to be very conservative when it comes to the revenues coming in, and those usually exceed the number that I present to the board and to the community, and then versus the expenses. But yes, we have a very healthy
That's
fund
good.
balance.
That's called CYA. I just wondered because, sometimes people don't realize, the money has to come from somewhere. So that was, what would you say that percentage is now?
We could get the actual number for you, so we're not guessing in
Yeah,
this
I just
meeting.
thought, I'd seen a average percentile of healthy townships and municipalities in Michigan, and we were way above that, so I just wondered where we're at now.
I think that's a number we could provide to the community as part of the board packet at the next meeting.
Oh, cool, okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Good job tonight, thanks.
Thanks. Other public comments?
Hi, Nancy Hoyland, Webster Road. And I would just like to talk about the senior center a little bit. I understand that we are now going to be open 5 days a week for next year. Okay.
That is something at this time that was decided previously by this board. It was my intention to bring data back to this board so they could make a final decision on what they would be doing in 2024.
Well, I guess I thought that's what was voted on as far as the senior center and the,
So I've
the
been
budget.
tracking data and attendance, so it's just another way for me to provide the board with an update as to what's occurring at the senior center.
Okay, so currently, on Tuesdays, I guess there's sometimes euchre that's provided. For what I understand, there's not an activity per se that the township is putting on. Our people have asked for many things. They've asked for popcorn and a movie. There's many things. Our people would like to be doing something. And I would like to see that happen.
That can and will happen. I will share with you that I have a document that contains approximately 25 to 30 activities that have been offered to the senior center and of which nobody has taken advantage of, including a flu shot clinic last year that had 4 people sign up for and needed to be canceled because the provider would not come and do that for 4 people. So Sometimes we hear from the senior center that there are ideas that people, I think, want to engage in activities they would like to take part in. And then unfortunately, the numbers of participation aren't aligning with that need or request.
Okay, I personally would like to see maybe another bingo. I appreciate the free bingo, I think that's wonderful. But our people also like the pay-to-play bingo. And if we could maybe do that on a Tuesday, or, like I say, popcorn and a movie. Our people would love to have some activity and get out of the house. And I would like to be able to see that happen. As for Thursdays, I've been overseeing euchre. We've had good turnout with that.
Good, I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, and our people enjoy it. And, you know, do we need to have someone else come in and oversee that when I'm overseeing it? As far as paying a person to come in?
I'm happy if you're willing to do that. I'm pleased to have you do that. I think that your bingo, or your euchre program has run really well, and I've been pleased to see that.
Okay, I just, you know, and, yeah, we enjoy it. And I'm
If
happy
you're
to
asking
help.
for help, that's a different situation.
No,
But if you're just
no.
saying to me you're comfortable with the way things are running, then I'm happy to hear that.
And I'm comfortable overseeing it. So, you know, to have another person overseeing it that comes in there and does nothing, do we need that? Do we need to pay a person to do that?
Oh, I see what you're saying. So when you all wanted the senior center, I'm sorry if I've blown her time, the senior center to be open, it did require a staff person to be there. So that's a conversation that we should have with you. If you're comfortable not having a representative of staff there, then we should have that conversation.
Okay. Let's plan on it.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
I'd encourage we talk to our insurers about liability if staff aren't present.
I will do that.
Mr. Hayes?
Yeah, how y'all doing?
Good, how are you?
I'm Dan Hayes, I'm a resident on Park Lake as well as chair of the Park Lake Advisory Board. And just, I'd heard about the Norm Fastener kind of concerns, so I just want to express appreciation first for kind of the folks that presented here today. I knew nothing and still know very little on that. One topic I didn't hear about that I know has been a topic for the Friends of Park Lake and the Park Lake Advisory Board is traffic on Park Lake. So I would imagine with 200 new jobs, we have a treacherous situation on Park Lake Road, I think. We're see nodding, particularly I hear like safe schools. So if you have that many more folks kind of coming every which direction, I have concerns over safety of folks. And again, if it's bringing in money for infrastructure, I'd suggest that might be a place to think about. Yeah, because again, the site situation looks good in terms of its easy access off those ramps, right? So people commuting could come off the interstate, but we all know folks take shortcuts every which way, depending which way they're coming from. So that's one topic I didn't hear anything about, and just as this goes forward, I think that has to be considered pretty clearly, both Webster Road North and Park Lake to the south. So thank you for your time.
Thanks. There was some pretty significant discussion about traffic at the last meeting, so you could either watch that video or talk to any of the planning commissioners who are here, and they could share that. That is definitely something that was brought up as the project moved forward.
I also noticed it was listed in the conditions that Miles included for the project, that the township sort of retains the right to, I don't know if I want to say control traffic, but to give input on appropriate traffic flow related to the facility.
Yeah. Other public comments?
Thanks for bringing that up, Dan. That is very important. Judy Gardy, Chair of the Senior Services Advisory Board. Just a question. I've chaired this board for a while. When asked to provide attendance of members at meetings, I've never included the trustees because I figured that's their job. And so I've never counted them for payment. Did I understand tonight I should count them for payment? I don't know if I missed my deadline. And Marie came to almost all of our meetings, so I count her as well?
This is for
For payment?
2024.
This is a 2024 payment moving forward, so no, that would be incorrect.
But not since she resigned.
This is a new initiative for 2024.
So I don't turn them in for 23? I don't turn the fact that Cheryl
I think you did.
attended our meetings for payment?
I think you did. I think I was paid, so.
Oh, she was there.
I will check with staff.
Yeah, would you let me know if I've made a mistake? Thank you.
I will, thank you.
Thank you, Judy.
Anybody else want to make a public comment? All right, I do have a public comment that was emailed in, which is something anybody, especially folks who can't physically get to us, are welcome to do. This is from Deborah Johnson, also a member of the Senior Services Advisory Board, to the Board of Trustees of Bath Charter Township. As I am unable to attend your meeting this evening, I've asked this letter to be read in my absence. A few months ago, I was appointed to the Senior Services Advisory Board. I was immediately impressed with the caliber of the others who serve on the Senior Services Advisory Board. The people are intelligent, experienced, skilled, and passionate about the needs of seniors in our community. Our town has an incredible resource available with our Senior Services Advisory Board. However, within a short period of time, I was asking the question, what am I to believe? I quickly learned that we, the Senior Services Advisory Board, are not seen as a resource of knowledge, ideas, experience, and/or volunteers. Not only are we not appreciated for our service, we receive neither professionalism nor courtesy from those in authority. On multiple occasions, we have asked Karen Hildebrandt as well as members of her staff to attend our meetings. Our requests are not even acknowledged. Ms. Hildebrandt has even gone so far as to forbid a board member from even speaking to someone on staff. Frankly, I am appalled that anyone on this Board of Trustees or employees of Bath would believe they have the authority to prevent any person from speaking to, well, anyone. I can't see how Ms. Hildebrandt's barring others' speech is anything but an abuse of power. Apparently, the Senior Services Advisory Board had misunderstood the recent vote to keep the center open 5 days a week. We all believed a decision had been made, and no trustee told us otherwise. We also believe that we could help with ideas to fill those additional hours with enjoyable activities and options for the seniors in our community. We have asked seniors for their opinions, discussed the logistics of possible events and/or activities, and have even offered to volunteer ourselves. We have also reached out to others in our community and our county for possible ways to liaise with them to bring many of these ideas to fruition. Ironically, although Ms. Hildebrandt will not respond to emails asking her to attend our meetings, she was quick to respond to a recent situation when a Senior Services Advisory Board member spoke at the Senior Center. An email sent to Ms. Gardy read much like a reprimand to a child. Ms. Gardy had simply premised her comments at the Senior Center with our belief that the Senior Center would indeed be open 5 days a week. The harshness of Ms. Hildebrandt's email was both unnecessary and unkind. Ms. Hildebrandt's email read that we, the Senior Services Advisory Board, exist to advise the Board of Trustees. Additionally, she stated only staff will be creating and scheduling programming. As we can't get the staff or trustees to attend our meetings and current leadership does not ask us to advise them, what am I left to believe? Based on leadership's unconcealed lack of interest as well as the poor communication, I can only believe that the real reason the Senior Services Advisory Board exists is to provide lip service to our community that current leadership cares about senior issues. I sincerely want to believe that isn't true. Please attend our meetings, ask for our advice, fully utilize the resources we have to offer, require the staff to respond to our communication in a timely, respectful, professional manner. Most of all, work with us to provide better lives for seniors in our community. Respectfully submitted, Deborah Johnson. So that will be reflected in the minutes. It's clear we have some communication issues with this committee. I would say some of the concerns that she brought up are shared by other committees. I think we have not done very well in our township to define what committees are supposed to do. Our statutory committees are pretty clear, but our advisory committees, we don't necessarily ask many of them directly for advice on things. So I think there's some things in here we could learn about how we could better strengthen our committees across the board. Sure.
I did write a letter to everyone, should have gotten it, to discuss this very subject at this meeting and be addressed, and it didn't show up. on the
I didn't get
agenda.
any letter from you.
You didn't?
Mm-mm. Did you mail it or email it?
Emailed it.
Mm-mm.
Really?
No, I'm sorry. Did anybody else?
There was an email earlier.
My
within
agenda
the last
items.
Week or so.
Yeah, it was like, that was the day before Wednesday. It was Wednesday. And I sent that out, and I said, because I had seen the letter from Judy. And that very day, I was in the senior center. It was a Thursday or a Tuesday when I was dropping off some materials for the senior center. I was not greeted. It must have been a Thursday, because there were people in there playing cards. And there was no greeter, there was nobody there when I went in to greet me, to help me put, where would you like me to put this stuff? There was no staff person there, which is a bit upsetting, as was the letter. Huh? Maybe they were in the back hiding, but all the while I was in there.
I don't think anybody was hiding.
Well, doing something in the back, but there was nobody there to let, when I walked in with materials, which was a little odd, that, and they have asked me that would be better Tuesdays and Thursdays to have support, somebody there with games or programs or whatever, and like you say, yes, sometimes there's not enough people that want to show up, but
Sherry, I did get your email. I'm sorry. I just want to clarify that.
Okay.
I didn't understand what you were asking for is these to put on the agenda. That's my bad.
Oh.
We'll do better in the future. Did you have something you wanted to add to that?
I would just ask that I have the opportunity to respond to that, possibly at the next board meeting, since I was unprepared to provide documentation to the letter that was read tonight.
Yeah, let's put senior services on the agenda for the
I'll send it out again.
18th. I did get it. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I misread
Okay,
that's what you wanted on the agenda. I see now what you're saying, so apologies.
no, yeah, just, we should. we
Clearly,
need to-
there's some things we need to work through.
We need to look at it, I think. I hear the sides and the people here, and we need to support our seniors. We really do. I
Yeah.
am passionate about it, too.
Yeah, I think all of our committees need good support. One of the things that I've had a conversation with the superintendent about since you all made me supervisor was we used to do training for committees, training for committee chairs. We used to do a holiday party for all of our volunteers, some really nice stuff to bring people in and recognize them for their work. We've gotten away from that over the years, but I'm planning on asking you all for some attempt to restart some of those in 2024, because I think there's communication issues, I think there's role issues very clear between staff and committees, and I don't think the Senior Services Advisory Board is at all the only one who is feeling these things or thinking these things about what are we supposed to be doing, what's our role. So I think the more we can add training and recognition for our volunteers, the better we'll all be.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So that's knocking around in my head, and I've already put it on the superintendent's agenda as well.
Okay, great.
But we'll add senior services on to December 18th. Any other public comment? All right, that brings us to board member comments. Sherry, you want to kick us off
Oh,
tonight?
jolly. I want Bath to be proactive and not reactive, and that's I have spent the last 2 weeks studying PFAS. So one of the things you might know that the EU is in process of changing the laws to use no PFAS in any manufacturing for anything except medical supplies. And I think this is terribly important to think about. They're more advanced than we are in terms of a lot of stuff protecting our environment. So I think that's important to know that. USA is also, this is a whole page on what they're thinking about doing here, inspecting our water, parts per trillion, whatever. This is all pending legislation. There's huge interest in this in EU and USA. And the art of negotiation is to win is to rush, because we'll miss some stuff. And that's why my main no here was slow down, we don't have all the information. And it terrifies me. The lawsuit in California, and this was, again, older technology, but it was over $800 million in damages. And just now happening near Grand Rapids was 56 million. So think about what we allow. It scares me to death. And I was told that they were going to put a strip mall in front of this, because we need one, and it would cover up the building in the back. And we're closing malls.
There's no plan for a strip mall.
That's what they just said tonight, but to me privately, when I was there, a strip mall in front with stores and all this to cover up, so that they even had projections of the image that you wouldn't see the building behind it.
I think there may have been some miscommunication. You are right that the images that I saw, probably the same that you saw, were businesses in front.
Yeah.
But none of the plans that I saw were strip malls. So it would be like individual restaurants, individual buildings.
This
That's
was
the
like a
long-term
long-
planning that they shared with me. There's not much difference between that and strip malls, but certainly
Right.
what they showed us was not necessarily strip malls.
It just feels rushed. I went last week, I don't know when you all went, but to be told this just a week ago, shown it less than a week ago, that this is such an important decision for our community. I think somehow we need to gather what our voters want, the people that elected us, the people that pay taxes here, that have no involvement, need to have more to say here. I believe that was my no, is about slow down, look at this more, and talk to our citizens.
Thanks, Sherry. Jack?
I'd just like to say, I know this Norm Fastener's project was a very heavy lift for our planning commission, for the developers, for all your staff who worked countless hours to try and make this happen. I feel they vetted it as good as they possibly could. They have brought forth people to explain the questions that we had, to answer them, allay any fears about things that have believed to be not looked at. Again, the fact that there's been ongoing work with the planning commission, I think Miles said months and months. And that's just to look through the stuff that's been prepared for years and years. So I'm very comfortable with our decision tonight. I think it was a solid decision. I think Ms. Kellerman's concern about PFAS is real. But we are operating, a lot of things happen operating with past knowledge. We are operating now with present knowledge. And I think there's a big difference between those two things. So thank you.
Thanks.
I just have to say, yes, superintendent said tax bills went out. Look for your tax bills in the next week.
Boo.
Hey, I got mine coming.
Boo.
All right, everyone gets a gift from Treasurer Wilson today.
Yep, they all do.
I had a couple of things. Thanks to Sherry for raising the concerns about PFAS and the environment. I too share environmental concerns. I thought the response from SCUMA and Brad Gursky was really helpful. He really sort of assuaged those concerns for me. And I'll say to the strip mall or business piece in front that we should all remember that these developers can plan whatever they want to plan, but that's still up to us to approve those plans. They still have to go through the planning commission. So I hope we don't get too hung up on that. That might be what they're planning to do, but they haven't gotten our permission to do any of that, and we'll be able to influence some of that, especially at the planning commission level. Some reminders that there are openings left on committees. If you're interested in serving on a committee, we'd love to have you. Park Lake Advisory Board has 1 member. Public Art Committee has several members. The Rec Committee has 1 member. Sewer Board of Appeals has 2. Zoning Board of Appeals has 2 alternate members. So we would love to get more people involved in their local government. So if you're interested, come on into the township or visit our website. They can get the committee application on the web. That's correct. Okay, great. Want to make sure I was saying the right thing. Come on in, we'll help you fill out the application. And to echo Jack's thanks to staff and the board, the planning commission, to the public for engaging in the conversation about this project. This certainly isn't the last conversation we'll have, and it's our job now as the board and our staff and the public to hold this project's feet to the fire to make sure that they're following through on these 18 conditions. Otherwise, they shouldn't have permission to operate in our township. So I have trust in our staff that they'll be able to hold folks to that. Other than that, thanks for coming out and giving your thoughts tonight.
I don't have anything tonight.
Me? I just want to say, hey, I made it through my full first meeting, so that was exciting. I think I seconded some things, so that was pretty cool. In reference to Norm Fasteners and PFAS, I was encouraged when I spoke with them that they also mentioned the EU restrictions and no PFAS except for medical devices, mainly because there's nothing else to replace the PFAS that's used in them yet, so that would be taking away. So, but also that Norm Fasteners follows EU regulations. That is the standard that they have to hold themselves to. So I did find that encouraging. And as I went through all the minutes for all the meetings, I kind of made a little list of the concerns that people made during public comment, because I felt that that was kind of the most important way to get a sense for people who were not in support or who had concerns about the project, and things like water runoff and wildlife species, as well as chemical concerns, traffic concerns, lighting concerns. And I was really encouraged in Miles' report to read through that I felt every single one of those had been more than adequately addressed, I thought, going forward. That the township, I feel, has a lot of legs to stand on all of those issues, so that although there's a change, I think there's a lot of good that can come from change as well. So I look forward to it.
So you're just gonna come here, the new gal, and show us all up and thanks for doing all that. That is really what we all should be doing.
I read every single minute.
Right.
That's remarkable.
That is very remarkable.
Well, I wanted to be, I think I have a duty to make sure that I'm prepared, and I feel like I'm coming into this a little bit late. I don't think, certainly wasn't expecting another vacancy, so I'm coming into this late, so. I don't know, it'll always be that case, but that's a good start.
Well done, thank you, trustee. Let's look for a motion to adjourn. How about I move to adjourn in honor of Al being absent tonight? Second, any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? We are adjourned. See you in 2 weeks. It's too hard to say.